computer. And so in the last 25 minutes, I put together a short PowerPoint. So we're not going to have a lot of slides, but we got a lot of information that I can share, and I think the pictures will be enough. And some of you may say, is that you in the tub? Yes. So what I'm doing here, what we're talking about is this is on hydrotherapy. So what happened? This is what we learned. I told you earlier that when Melanie had cancer, and I was sitting there that night, and I saw that book, and I opened it up and I read, and said I got nothing to lose. But what I'm sharing with you is hugely more information than what was in that book. It was very, very little. There wasn't much detail. In fact, there was a few things that scared me half to death. That is not the book, Jody, but there is a lot of good hydrotherapy things in there. We can't print the other one. It's Home Remedies by Agatha Thrash, and it's copyrighted. It might still be available, I'm not sure. That was where I initially got it, but literally, there's a small paragraph for instructions. Home Remedies.
Home Remedies.
Dr. Agatha Thrash. So, we've all heard this saying, fever is a friend, and yet when we get a fever, what's the first thing everybody wants to do? Bring it down. Get that fever down. Oh no, take some aspirin. Quick, get that fever down. Now actually, in reality, we should be saying, let's bring it up higher.
But not too high.
I'm not too concerned about that. She said not too high, and I would say I'm not too concerned about that, because here's the thing. A dry fever kills. A wet fever heals. So if you can get enough fluid in the individual, if you can hydrate them enough, or if you're using it in a method like what I'm going to show you here, we've had Melanie, by the way, they say, has anybody ever heard that a temperature of anything over 105 will cause permanent brain damage? Okay, well, my wife has severe brain damage. I've had her to 106.4. And I've held it there for almost an hour during her cancer time. And you've all witnessed how much brain damage she has. Especially in the last, 4 or 5 hours of lectures today. So, but the thing is, it needs to be a wet fever. What we're going to do with the fever bath is we're going to create a fever, if there's not one there. Because see, fever is a friend. Let me tell you what happens when you get a fever in your body. The body says, uh-oh, got a problem here. Call in the soldiers. Well, to call in the soldiers, we got to create a fever, because that's what creates the antibodies that then are the soldiers that do the fighting. And because the soldiers go out and fight the enemy, but they give their lives in the process. So literally how we end up dying from a disease is the antibodies are out there fighting the cancer, the COVID, the whatever other ailment it may be. And it gets to a point where the body's, because it's trying to make more soldiers to fight the battle against this. The problem is, the faster it's trying to make them, if you're not giving it the tool it needs to continue making them, it begins getting a little weaker, and it can't make them fast enough, and the soldiers are dying, giving up their life trying to fight this thing, and the body's not replacing them fast enough, and you begin where the problem, whatever dis-ease is there, then begins up. And by the time you get diagnosed with cancer or some of these more traumatic diseases, you end up with the white cells are already pretty well depleted. Things aren't happening. When Melanie had cancer, she was less than 5 parts per million white blood cell count. So take a million cells, and she's got five soldiers out there. It's pretty far gone. Okay? So, here's what we need to do this. We need a bathtub. Handrail is really nice, but when we did it with Melanie, this was in our home in Tonasket. When we did this treatment with Melanie, we lived in a single-wide, 1970 single-wide trailer with a little tiny short bathtub. And I've had people say, oh, well, we have a really little bathtub. We couldn't do it.
Oh, we did.
Wrong. I'll show you how. I'll show you what to do so you can do it in a... I could probably do it... Well, put it this way. If the hot water tank in an RV was, you know how little RV bathtubs are? If the hot water tank could put out enough hot water, I could do it in one of those bathtubs. But we've actually, yes, we actually will put a kettle on the stove sometimes. 5 kettles, yeah. Big kettles, whatever. On the wood stove, we've done it. Right now, the house we live in, I actually added a second hot water tank so that the bathtub there, it comes from the main hot water tank that takes care of the rest of the house. It goes into a second hot water tank, the hot water does, comes out of the second tank and goes to that bathroom where the bathtub is that we use to do that, the larger of the two in our house, so that we have plenty of hot water. That's one of the key important things. The other thing to do, guys, if you're going to do a fever treatment, and I say guys because hot water tank, normally they're turned way down. They're set at about 118, 117 degrees. First thing we do, take the covers off, carefully put a screwdriver in there because you will charge your battery in a bad way if you stick it in the wrong spot. You know about electricity, huh? Yeah. I saw that. Look, you carefully turn it up all the way, as hot as it will go. Because here's the thing. So, when we put, let's say we want water that's at 100 degrees in our bath, okay, which is actually quite low. It's much higher than that, but I'm just using 100 as an example number. So we put 100 degree water in our tub. Now, if we had 100 degree water coming out of our hot water tank, we could just put it in at 100 degrees, okay? But if we have a little tiny hot water tank and we want 100 degree water, if we turn the hot water tank way up, and we take out that little bit of water, and now we've got, say, 150 degrees in our tub, but it's not enough. We can add some cold water to it, get enough water, and get our 100 degrees. That's the concept. Hopefully I'm explaining that well. So by having hot water tank turned all the way up, top element and bottom element, both, by having that turned up as you're using water, you've got really, really hot water to come in. And so it kind of gives you a head start because it takes a lot of hot water to do a fever treatment. So the next thing that we need, we have a wool blanket, a pair of wool socks. We have, those are pretty much necessary. And a kettle. A thermometer.
That's necessary.
That is necessary. You need that, especially if you're not accustomed to doing the fever treatments. This is a oxygen sensor. We found that it's also takes the pulse, shows you what the pulse is. Found it to be really handy because we've discovered through the years I had a theory, and we did some testing and found out that I was right. And that is, when you do a fever treatment, your oxygen drops. As the fever goes up, the oxygen goes down. You're in the tub. The person in the tub begins to feel a little panicky. It's like, let me out of this thing. That's why Melanie, when I had her in the tub, she'd say to me, "You don't love me." And she'd be trying to climb out, and I'd use my hand. She was so weak, it was very easy. I'd use my hand and I'd push her back in the tub, and she'd be pulling my arm. "You don't love me, you hate me, I'm going to divorce you." And we went through that quite a while, time and time again. And I just kept saying, "Sweetie, this is tough love. I'm not giving up. You're still alive." So we found things that help. This helps, but not really entirely necessary. You do need to be able to take the pulse. And so if you can
I
look at a
don't take it
clock.
there. I want want their hands in the water, I take it.
Take it up here most of the time. Sometimes we'll go here, but most of the time we do it up here. Yeah. So, and then we have, this is a jacuzzi thermometer. You'll see that in action a little bit, we use that to monitor the temperature of the water in the bathtub. So that, with Melanie, I didn't have that, I didn't have this. I had an old mercury thermometer. By the way, if you get these wet, they tend to fail. So you try to keep them dry, but you're doing it to the person in the tub, and yeah, they just don't last.
And the reason we don't use a mercury one is because people bite them in two when they get too hot. And it also takes too much time. It takes 1 minute for it to go all the way.
So you're short on oxygen, like I explained, from being hot. And you put this in your mouth, and you've got to close your mouth around it in order to get a good reading for a minute to a minute and a half. And you're feeling like you're going to suffocate because you can't get enough air through your nose because your oxygen's low. And it really becomes a challenge. Melanie made it through it. That's all we had. That's what we used. It is possible. But these quick reads, the 7-second, 10-second thermometers, they're wonderful except for one thing. They don't beep loud enough. I can't hear them to know when they're done. But don't use the forehead sensor things that you can stick on the forehead, or the one in the ear that's a physical in the ear, or even the digital ones that you just point and touch. They're not going to work. They're not accurate enough because of what you're doing.
Wait a couple minutes for after you give them tea.
Yes, that's the other thing. So what we have here is tea. I'm not actually remembering exactly what that one was.
Yarrow.
Probably yarrow. Yarrow is one of our favorite for that. Herbs that we use in the tub.
That's dry mustard.
Mustard powder. I'm not talking French's mustard, or de Poujon, or whatever it is. I'm talking about mustard, Grey Poupon, there you go. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about mustard powder. It's the only place you'll find mustard in our home. We do not eat it. It's not good for you.
But it opens the pores.
But we put it in the bathtub. We also put cayenne in the bathtub. But let me give you a little warning with that. And that is especially for the men. Melanie has, you want to use some Vaseline on the genitals and the buttocks, because, well, put it this way, you can burn the skin.
The soft skin area.
I've had the soft skin on my back end burnt from it, and it's not a pleasurable thing. So, a little Vaseline there. Be moderate about the cayenne. Melanie tends to, it's like, how much should we do? Dump a little more. So when I say moderate, I'm talking, really hot cayenne. You might want a tablespoon, a heaping tablespoon of cayenne in it.
Mustard, I use a quarter
to half a cup of mustard, roughly. I mean, this is not one of those things where it's take 2 pills today and 2 tomorrow type of thing. It's kind of a dump and pour, experimental, and every time we do a treatment, it's probably not exactly the same.
What's the mustard powder do?
It opens the pores. The mustard and the cayenne open up the pores and allow you to sweat, which is what you want.
Tea from the inside out hydrates them.
So the other thing that we do is we have an army cot, and those are actually nursing home pads. You can find those out there. We found that they're just really handy to use, protect. This is for after the fever treatment for the sweat out. And
prepare that before you get them in, so it's done.
And I'll explain more about that in a little bit. So, what we do, we put the person in the tub, and we usually put some sort of swimming trunks or something on them, especially if there's, if we try to get the guys to take care of the guys, the girls, but just in case, if somebody is at our home, which we're now teaching how to do this, we don't really bring anybody there anymore. It's so hard on us to, one treatment's not bad, but when you start doing 1 a day, 6 days a week for 3 months, it's very, very intensive. For both, especially one. I think it's it's almost harder for the person giving them than it is the person receiving, and we've been on both ends of these. So what we've done here is we put the socks, the wool socks, on the feet, and we put the wool blanket over the top of the person. When we first started with that, when we first put Melanie in the tub, I didn't use the wool blanket. I didn't know about that. We didn't even use a towel to start with, but I was having a hard time getting her temperature up, partly because of how sick she was, partly because of the fact that so much heat was escaping out of her body that I couldn't keep it in. So the purpose of the blanket is to keep the person warm. The other thing that is imperative, the feet and the hands are never, unless you're like checking a pulse that you really need to, and I can do that underwater sometimes as well, but like Melanie said, we always go up here. We keep those limbs under. People want to get their hands out and whatnot, and it's like, got to keep reminding them, put your hands back in the water.
Zip 'em in a blanket.
So what you can see there in Melanie's hand, kind of, sorta, see, is she's got the kettle in her hand. That water is running, and you can see I'm laying kind of on my side. My knees are right here. Got my feet tucked back because she's running probably straight hot water into that tub. She runs it right straight into the kettle, but she's catching some of the water from the tub as well. And she is stirring that water. That is a process that pretty much keeps going, not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time. You've got to keep the water moving. How many of you have ever been in a tub, and if you sit there for any length of time, you feel the water doesn't feel very warm, and then you stir the water and it's warm again? Your body puts an insulator around you. So by continuing to stir the water, that helps a lot. By the way, jetted bathtubs work great, except for the fact that it wants to suck the blanket into the inlet, so that becomes a challenge. Also, the next person that takes a bath might end up with a little excitement more than they planned, because there might be some residue of cayenne and mustard in the bath. So we start out with just working like this. The next thing that we're doing, there's your jacuzzi thermometer. That water, and it's hard to see the numbers there, that water is 108 degrees at this point.
You want it between 110, 112, and up to 114 if you've got a cancer patient that you're trying to get to 106.
Maybe we better put a microphone on you, dear.
Oh, okay.
Or give you a hand mic.
Shall I take a hand mic?
Just so that it's for the recording.
Okay.
So say it again.
So yes, you're going to want that water up to 112, 114 for a seriously ill patient that you're trying to get 106. And you have to maintain it there. That's why you continually move the water, which this is one reason it's difficult for us, because with Mark working without me now and me home alone, it's hard to stir the water, keep that water moving, keep the temperature of the water proper, and keep vitals. I keep vitals on the person. Every 5 minutes I check and write down the vitals, because I don't want them going up too high temperature-wise, and I also don't want their pulse rate going up over 190.
So it's a two-person operation.
It's a
It
two-person
really is
operation.
a two-person. I mean, I did it alone when I did Melanie. It's really challenging. It can be done, but it's a whole lot easier if you've got two people administering. It also helps tremendously.
And doing alone is why he's making me stop. I went up to Canada to help a lady who had cancer, and she was 6 foot tall and weighed about 60 more pounds than I did. And as I was lifting her to pull her out of the tub, her 12-year-old girl was there to help me. But, you know, I didn't want to leave it to the children. And she started to slip and fall, and so she struggled. And as I twisted, I bulged some discs in my back, and I was done. We went back down into the tub with her, And I went to my knees, I drained the tub, we had already put the ice water over her, but we literally threw the cold wet sheet blanket over her and left her in the tub to do that part while I went to lay flat and try and recover. And so when I go to lift heavies, I'm back to page 1 there. So it does take some man-sized effort
Okay,
here.
and we've got a question over there.
I don't need a mic. I know I came in late. Just tell me this for the recording. The recording.
Fever treatment. This is fever treatments, hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy fever treatment. So, and Melanie, you're getting ahead of, you've never seen these slides. The PowerPoint was not on my computer, so I threw this together in the last few minutes here. So the thermometer, we get it out, and periodically through, as the person's temperature rises, you begin checking it more often. It takes a few minutes, depending on how sick they are. When I started with her, I could not get her temperature up to, by the way, what's the normal temperature? 98.6. 98.6, right? I couldn't get her up to 98.6. It took almost, I think it was a little over a week before I got her temperature over 98.6. So here's
And that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. If you get a person in the tub, take their temperature right away before they start getting hot. And if their basal temperature is at 96.8, you need to realize that getting them up to 106 is way too high. Right. That's 110 from where they started out with. You have to take all that into consideration.
So obviously we just started. Right there, I'm at 98.8. So we're just getting started on it. I'm just barely breaking a temperature, a fever. This photo is just kind of a little further back so you can kind of see what's happening there with that. So as we do this, we continue stirring the water, adding more hot water, increasing the temperature of the water.
Giving the patient tea.
Yes.
At the same time, you need to be draining off the cold water.
Sometimes. We usually don't let out water unless the tub gets too full. You can see there at the level of the water in the tub, we've still got some space there. So as the tub starts to get too full, sometimes we'll let some out. But when we're putting in water, we're putting in straight hot water that's probably, I'm going to say 140, 150 degrees. But you don't want it running on their feet. Their feet are kind of tucked away from that to the side, folded back, however you can do. And then you have socks on them, and you have the blanket over them as well to help protect. Diabetes is what you're thinking? Yes, ma'am. I'm getting there.
Go ahead.
All of the books out there say never give fever treatments to a diabetic. And I wondered about it a lot. And Melanie mentioned earlier today, the man that came to our home was shingles. And he'd been diabetic since he was 5 years old. He was on 2 types of insulin with shots, etc. And his name was John. And I said, John, I don't know of anything that'll work better than fever treatments, but it says not to do it. Everything I found, everywhere I have looked, it says don't do it to a diabetic. And I said, I'm not sure why. I think they'll help you if we could do it, but I don't know what's going to happen. And he said, I've had diabetes so long, he says, I can tell you what my numbers are for my blood sugar by just how I feel. And I've watched him do it. He literally he'd be off by maybe 2 points on a finger stick versus him telling you. He knew. And he said, let's do it. And I said, okay, let's do it. He was a big man too.
His feet were numb.
So we did it. But here's what we figured out in the process of this.
He told us to put the wolf.
And he figured it out. He's the one that said, my feet don't have a lot of feeling. I wonder if my feet could get burned from this, especially being by the fill of the tub. And he said, do you have any socks or anything? And that's where we started using that pair of socks that was in the photo here. And we've used that pair, we still have them. They're just reserved for fever baths. And he's the one that we gave 5 treatments to. And his insulin went down, his shingles was gone. Within 7 days, it was all scabbed over, gone, and he went back home, and he was, it was amazing. So since then, we have done many diabetic patients. We've never had a blood sugar issue at all, ever. And so best we can figure out, it's because of their feet and them not being able to say, my feet are burning, can you, and sometimes, I mean, I've been in the tub and I've said, wow, 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 that's hot, you're burning my feet. And Melanie has said the same thing. They may not be able to feel that quite so much. The other thing that we always do, I don't care who the patient is, whether they're friend, family, don't know them, we keep our hands in the water. And the reason why, I mean, not constantly in there, but as we're stirring the water, and I'm not talking in a latex glove up to our armpits or anything like that, I'm talking bare hands in the water. Because we want to feel that water temperature. As we're putting it on at their feet, we're stirring it with the kettle, and we used to do it with our hands. We discovered a small kettle is just so much more efficient. And we get our hands right in there in the water, because then if it's not burning my hand, it's likely not going to be burning their feet. And that's the reason for that. So as they are in the tub, they've already had, before going to the bathtub, we have done what we call super hydrate. That means they have had 2 quarts, that's half a gallon, of water and or tea within like 2 hours before we take them to the tub. And they have not eaten anything for at least 5 hours. That means no juice, nothing, absolutely nothing. I'll tell you about an experience that we did, how we learned that. All this is from hands-on, what we did, experience. I came home from work. There had been, should I tell them the whole thing or just a piece? Just a piece. Okay, just the piece of it. I came home from work and I was feeling like I was going to really get sick. And I said, Melanie, I need a fever bath. But I didn't say it immediately, because when I walked in the door, I'd called and said, hey, I'm on my way home. And she had supper ready when I got there. I sat down, I ate, and I said, I am really feeling cruddy. I'm just feeling like I'm going to get sick. And we couldn't afford that at that point in time. And I think it was it you that said we ought to give you a fever bath? Okay, so you told me we ought to give you a fever bath. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a really good idea. Let's do that. So within about 30 minutes after, and this was before we realized super hydrate as well. So within about, 30 minutes of finishing supper, I'm in the bathtub. And
Bad move.
Yeah.
yes, I threw up all over the place multiple times, because the minute we run as soon as I broke that fever up there, I hit about 101 of temperature, it all came out. And it was agony. I suffered through, but not a very good treatment.
And he was not sweating well, even though I started giving him yarrow tea in the bath, which should have started beforehand.
So, no food, period. No juice, no nothing. Or it will come back at you. Tea works. That's no problem. You can do the tea, but they need to be, most people don't drink enough water. Period. The majority of us never drink enough water. So we make sure that we get half a gallon in them at least. And if we sense that they're dehydrated, we may push them beyond that. They're going to be saying, oh, I'm so full, I feel like I'm bloated. It's like, here, have some more water, have some more tea.
Not your ears yet.
Yeah, so they're not pouring out the ears, so I don't think you're too full yet.
Yeah.
So lots of tea in there and water in there to get hydrated. Because when you get in the tub and you start bringing that water temperature up, you begin to sweat. And if you have nothing on the inside to sweat out, any liquids being hydrated on the inside, you're just creating a bigger problem. So, okay, it didn't show me that was a video clip. So get the tea, we use a straw so that you don't have to get up out of the water. It works just fairly easy. And of course, you can see the kettle there and whatnot. My temperature's going up. By the way, I was not sick for this video. I told Melanie, let's just do this and I will fake it. After I got in the tub and going.
I changed his mind. Oh, honey, you're going to be in there a while.
We're going to do this. So.
Revenge is sweet.
And she decided to do a 30-minute, 45-minute trip.
Yeah, I got.
See, I had to get the numbers on this thing, guys, to go up.
But you could have stuck it in the bathtub water. So anyway, I actually got a full-blown fever treatment in. This is the real thing, okay? Even though I didn't need it, well, maybe I did need it. I just wasn't sick that I knew of. So at this point, that doesn't show up real well on there.
101.8.
101.8 is where I'm at. Yeah, Matt was learning cameras. So I think he gets it there almost. So 101.8. So at this point in time, our water temperature is just about 100, almost 112. Right there. Question?
At this point, or maybe before this point, we would normally have a ice cold wet rag on their forehead.
I don't
Guess what?
Go ahead.
Right there.
That's the next slide.
I usually don't put them on until they break 101
Until they
or
break,
102.
until the person
102.
breaks 100 to 101, unless their temperature is really, really low to start with, then you may want to start that earlier. I was going to say, here's how you know it's time to start. When you put it on and they go, then you know, and by the way, this 5-gallon bucket has 2 bags of ice in it. So the standard size of ice, just to give you an idea of quantity, along with being filled with cold water.
I have found with most people, if I put the ice on too soon, we're going to struggle to get their temperature up. It will literally hold them down. If you let it break over 102, then you can start getting their temperature to come up.
By the way, the claws, we've proven it, it is not necessary.
Yeah.
It is entirely 100% to make the person more comfortable so they can endure the time. We have done fever treatments, experimenting multiple times without them, without the claws. It's a whole lot harder to stick in there. I mean, we experiment on us. Right. We don't experiment if we're working on somebody else. It's to
use if not the rag.
What do we use?
Nothing.
Well, how does the cold water get to them?
We don't.
We don't
We've
until we
done-
throw it over. What he's saying is the brain will not go kooky if you don't use the cloth, but it's a lot more tolerable if you put it on the head.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
So what we do is we take a hand towel and we put it around the neck, around the base of the neck, and fold it right across in front. And we take a washcloth and we put it on the forehead. And the reason wipe the face with it and whatnot. And the reason 2 people it's really helpful to have 2 people is because when you're doing this, and by the time the person's hitting about 103 to 104, those claws have to be changed continually. You pull one off, you dip it, you put it back, you pull the other one off, you dip it. You don't wring them out tight. You sop and wet. The bathroom floor is going to get wet. Notice here, it's kind of hard to see there, but those are towels laying on the floor there. That's not the flooring. There's bath towels laying on the floor to catch the slop, because it's going to happen. You pull those out, sloppy, wet. Sometimes we'll give them just a light squeeze.
Just on the ends. Leave
Just
the
kind
middle.
of or on the ends a little bit.
Leave the middle full.
But you do one cloth, you do the next cloth, you do the next, and just back and forth continually. Not real fast. Yeah, you don't put ice in the mouth. The other thing I thought of a moment ago is we were struggling with some patients. Melanie had liver issues. So automatic for liver, you want to use lemon because lemon is such a good cleanser for the liver. But we're doing fever treatments and we can't get their temperature up. It will not go up. And we're scratching our heads trying to figure out what is going on.
Back to the books.
Back to the books, started reading, and we found lemon holds the body temperature down. Give them lemon this evening, do a fever bath tomorrow morning, and you will not get their temperature to climb. It'll go up a tiny bit, but not enough to do any good. So it doesn't work. Lemon doesn't work. Lemon is good, and lemon works great for a lot of things. We even got a book in here on it.
And for my liver cancer patient, if I gave her a drink of warm lemon water first thing in the morning because she'd beg for it, I could not get her temperature up that day or the next day. It would last like 48 hours.
So as a side note, if somebody is heat stroking or susceptible to heat stroke, use some lemon in the water. Now I'm not talking lemonade, I'm talking lemon, pure lemon, fresh lemon, or
in the drinking
pure
water?
liver in the drinking water.
It only tastes sour to those who have a lot of sugar.
Yep, exactly. Matt said it only tastes sour to those who've had a lot of sugar. The other thing with, boy, that one just slipped out. There was something else about lemon.
We had to do it in the eye. We had to
Oh, yeah.
experience the lemon in the eye.
Lemon in the eye.
That's worse than cayenne.
Yeah, it's worse than cayenne. So anyway, we've got the cold claws, and we continually are rotating through those claws. You see Melanie there, she just kind of squeezed the end. Now I'm not real hot there at that point, 101, but I'm just a wimp when it comes to being in the tub like this. And all these video clips were done just real quick, real short. So as we continue on with the treatment, at this point, depending on the person, we could have 15 minutes that's gone by, or we might have 35 or 40 minutes that's gone by, depending on how sick they are, depending on numerous factors, but it's basically the patient. Yeah, I look pretty distressed there. My temperature's starting to get up, but notice the eyes. Melanie has gotten so, with all these years of her doing treatments on different people, she can look at their eyes and tell you what their body temperature is when they're in a fever treatment. The eyeball, they get dilated, they kind of get glassy. I kind of look like I'm on drugs there.
But you still have the alert look, so you're not up over 103.
Correct. Exactly. In fact, we started doing the, and I think we got there we go, video clip of it.
See?
102.1 is where I'm at with that. So, and you notice while she was checking the,
How come it went off?
because it got to the end of the video.
Oh.
There was a black spot on the video. So when you noticed when she got to the doing the temperature there, the kettle is laying there on me, where it's handy for her to continue stirring. So the whole time this treatment's going on, she's continually adding water. She's watching, and we use the adding of water, the stirring of water, and the temperature, the jacuzzi temperature, to look at the temperature of the water. We've run the water average temperature up to 114, depending on if the person's temperature isn't going up, we run the water up hotter to get the temperature to climb. Once you get them up to the desired temp, we'll talk about those in a moment, you want to try to hold them there for a little while. I say a little while, depending on the person. We're monitoring the pulse. We're watching the eyes. We're checking the temperature. And we may stop adding hot water for a little bit. Hold them there. I've held Melanie at 106.4 for 52 minutes. That is intense. Really intense.
It's the longest 52 minutes of your life.
she kind of got a little kooky on me. Just kind of a little disoriented. She started talking a little funny. And I had been pushing her because all the things that I've read about it, in order to kill cancer, you have to get above 105, and you can go up to 107. We've never been that high with anyone. We've seen that 105, and I just see the look on his face, he's going, "You're crazy."
If I get somebody up over 106.5, I start immediately cooling off the water.
By the way,
if they keep climbing real quickly,
yes,
I try
if
and
you
bring them
see
back down.
temperature all of a sudden start just
Spiking.
going up, they're 103, 104, 105, and I mean over, say, like 3 or 4 minutes. The easiest thing to do, I'm just going to run back. Right there's the bucket. Take their hands out of the hot water,
Put them in the
stick
bucket.
their hands in the bucket. It'll just bring that temperature right back down in a quick hurry. Because remember, we've created this fever. We can control, and that's the whole thing. We're controlling this fever. It's a controlled environment. It's not a fever raging out of control. We can, by what we do, because we created it, we can control it. And
Can I just say right here, I had a lady lie to me. I asked her, "Have you had chemo?" And she
Yes.
said, "Oh, just one treatment." She didn't tell me it was 1 year of treatment. So I get her in the tub, and she just spiked, and she literally died in the tub on me. And I pled with the Lord, "Help me know what to do." And he said, "Get the cayenne under the tongue." And I did that and CPR and brought her back and said, "All right, talk to me. How come I have no control over your fever? What have you done? What has the doctor done to you?" "Well, I had," and then she starts rolling off this chemo that she had for a whole year. When you're taking care of somebody, make sure that they let you know, or that they're honest with you about what they've done. Because when the body has had chemo, it does not respond correctly to the fever bath, and you can lose them in the tub. God brought her back so I wouldn't be in prison. I know that to this day. And I'm grateful to him for that, but you need to know all the particulars about a person before you just pop them in a tub
Yeah.
and say, "We're going to create a fever."
chemo or radiation,
Okay.
if they've had any treatments at all,
Be careful.
we just tell them, well, have them get right with the Lord, make their peace, and
Do what they can.
and do what you can to keep them comfortable. You may find a few herbs that will alleviate some symptoms, but you've already chose the wrong road, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it doesn't work. In fact, you'll just get yourself in problems. So all the way through the treatment, we're running them through, we're circulating water, we're monitoring the water temperature, we're monitoring their temperature, we're monitoring their pulse, we're talking to them. Some people will just lay back and relax, just close their eyes and relax. We've had some people fall asleep in the tub while they're doing this, and I'm not quite sure how they can do that, but we'll wake them up, we'll tap them and, "Hey, can you talk to me?" "Yeah, I'm still here, I'm still with you." "Okay."
Other people start confessing like you wouldn't believe.
Oh yeah.
Like a street serum.
We've heard it stated, I won't say by who, but we've had somebody say,
A Christian is like tea bags,
put them in water.
and
Yes.
you'll know what kind they are.
A young man said, "I think if I ever get married," this was not Matt, "if I ever get married, I'm going to have you give them a fever treatment first so that I can find out what they're really
She's
like."
really like. Bring her on. We'll help you out.
Okay, so I don't have any more pictures. I apologize for that. I only had a few on the computer. I'm just going to explain through the rest of the process, partly because some of the process you just flat don't want to take pictures of. I mean, yes, we put on a guy, we put swimming trunks. Those pictures aren't on here. And I didn't have the PowerPoint, I just had what was on the computer.
Oh, okay.
And I'm thankful what was here was here. So what we do after the person has, I wished we had the ice water. So what we do, at this point, my temperature, you know, we've got it up to where we want it. I know they took me to 104 with this treatment. Before I only stayed there though for what, 15 minutes, something like that. Not very long.
And he's the boss, so we had to get him out.
I was begging, crying. People will do that. They'll beg, please let me out, I've done enough, I can't take it any longer. It happens. So what you do at this point, so when we're ready to take them out, we leave the blanket on, we leave the socks on, and we pull the plug on the water and we begin draining the water in the bathtub. Once the water is almost gone, we begin taking off the socks, leaving the blanket over the top of them as much as possible so that they're not cooling off. We don't want to cool them off gradually. We take the socks off. We've made sure we filled that 5-gallon back up with water. Sometimes we've added a little ice if for some reason it's been a longer treatment and the ice has melted down extra. But we make sure and we also make sure there's no big chunks of ice in the bucket. Get your hands in there, stick them in there, feel to the bottom, make sure there's no big chunks. Because what you're going to do is you're going to pull that blanket off of them, push it down, get them. We put them into let me grab a chair here so that I can simulate it and be up. I'd do it on the floor, but y'all wouldn't be able to see very well, so we'll see if we can do this. So they're sitting in the bathtub. We bring the feet up, and we put people in this position. Tuck them up as much as they can, and yes, we've done it to an 86 years old. We had to help him, you know, get up there, although he was amazingly strong. Stronger than some of the younger ones. So we pull them up like this, put your head down, and this is the fun part. You take that 5-gallon bucket of ice water, and you pick it up, and you pour it over them, and you make sure you get it all on. And let me tell you, it sounds like...
And then rub them down with ice where you
Then you grab the ice, and you start rubbing their skin with the ice. It sounds like absolute torture, but I'm telling you, that is such a wonderful feeling. When you've had a temperature up that high, when you get that ice water, it's like, oh, yes. There's no, oh, that's cold.
No.
If they did that, you didn't get their temperature up there. So you pour that ice water on them. It feels marvelous.
Feel energized.
That gives you the time to get them from the tub to the cot and wrapped in the cold wet sheet. It closes the pores so that as the heat comes back out, you've already got them wrapped.
So you've closed the pores by the ice water. What we usually do is we try to set that cot as close as we can to the bathroom. Before we had the cot, when I did Melanie, I would lay her, because in that little single wide trailer, I laid her on the floor right outside the bathroom door. I threw a pad on the floor and threw some plastic over the top of it. They will soil mattresses. If you're going to use a bed, put some plastic down, some thick plastic, so that it doesn't, because they'll ruin it. If you take a smoker and put them in this wet sheet wrap, they will ruin the sheet in one thing. It will turn it yellow, brown, and you will never get those stains out.
When we have people that have been on a lot of doctor prescription drugs, the sheet turns a purple green. If they are gangrenous or have really bad blood, the sheet will turn green. The smokers turn yellow, the cancer patients turn yellow, green, and iridescent colors. It's odd. Never ever use a polyester sheet.
No.
Use a cotton sheet, a full cotton sheet. That's very important for this. A white sheet is best.
Yeah,
so
you don't
that
want
you
them printed, you don't want the colors, you don't want them to absorb anything at this point. So what we do is we take that sheet, prior to starting this whole treatment, the sheet has gotten entirely wet. I'm talking soaked. We wring it slightly, but not much. It's still dripping. And if it's wintertime, we take it outside and hang it over the railing or something. If it's warm weather like this time of year, we put it in the freezer.
Through the treatment.
Through the treatment. And
then have a couple people pull it apart, lay it on the cot, and put your hot patient on it. Wrap them up tight.
So as we're draining water, when I'm doing it alone, I'll say, okay, we're going to stop. You just lay there and relax a minute. I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to go get the sheet. I go get the sheet while the water's draining. And I begin pulling sheet apart because it'll get so stiff. Sometimes Matt and I are jerking on it and jerking each other off our feet to get it, because it's froze, it's solid. But it quickly thaws and you're able to pull it apart. And what you want to do is when you wrap the sheet, and I should have thought to bring one, but we usually will, if we can, we stand them up. If they're stable enough, we'll stand them up. And if we stand them up, we'll wrap the sheet around the trunk of the body. Then we bring the arms down and bring enough sheet to come over to cover the arms. And we'll stand them up, and literally they're like a mummy, and they just walk.
We have to carry most of them.
Most of them, though, if they're really sick and they have cancer, you carry them. And that usually takes 2 people. We grab under the arms. So one person will grab like this, the other person will grab under the knees, and we've laid the sheet over the cot, over the pads, like I showed you there on the, where is it here?
Back.
Right there. So we lay the sheet over this, and it's laying down onto the floor. And we pick them up, we carry them there, we set them down, we do it as quickly as we can, and we get the sheet over them. Then what we use is these nursing home pads, and we put a layer of that over the top of the sheet. Before we had those pads, I would lay a layer of plastic over the top to protect the bedding, and then I would put blankets on, and we always put blankets on the person. And so we put them on the cot, and we'll take a pillow, stuff it underneath or something to try to make them as reasonably comfortable as possible, wrapped in that cold, wet sheet. And what we have done is we leave them there until they quit sweating. And how you can tell if they're sweating, I'm looking for a specific photo. Is it showing up? It's not going to show. I can see it on... No, I can see it on my end on the computer. But how you know if they're sweating, let me go back to the cot, is their forehead. You wipe it off, and if it beads up again with sweat, you know they're still sweating. Because they'll lie to you.
I usually try and get about 1.5 quarts to 2 quarts more of tea down them while they're in that. If they have...
in the cold sheet wrap.
In the cold sheet wrap. If they have liver trouble, we give them a liver detox tea. Every other day, I will then give them a kidney bladder flush tea because you don't want the kidneys to get backed up. So we rotate. If it's something else, we'll go with the yarrow and just have them keep sweating out. Yes, Matt?
Tell them about the person that took a hot shower and then did that.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't work. A lady called me and said, okay, he took a warm shower and then we put him in the cold, wet sheet and he's still really cold and it's been an hour. What do I do? His teeth are chattering.
His body temperature wasn't hot enough. If you want, the sheet treatment can be used alone as a treatment. It's like equivalent to a 3-day fast.
No.
Isn't it?
30-day
fast? Excuse me. So, but...
Christopher.
That's what Dr. Christopher says. But here's the thing. So if you're going to do a cold sheet wrap, you put alone, just as a treatment, you put them in the bathtub, forget the bucket of ice water and all of that, you just get them in the tub and you take a hot bath until you've gotten the temperature way up. And when I say way up, I'm talking 101, 102, something like that. Once you've gotten up to that point, by the way, you'd be surprised. Most of us go, oh, man, 101? Anybody in here like a hot bath? Like you like to soak in a hot bath?
Jacuzzi.
Okay? So you like a hot bath. I can almost guarantee every time you take a hot bath, you hit at least 100 degrees fever, if not 101. Every time you just taking a hot bath. So it's really, to get to 101 or 102 is not like, oh, this is extremely hard. Just, you can easily get up to that, unless you're really, really sick. So you create that little bit of a fever, you get yourself really hot. You could do it to yourself. You lay the sheet out, the cold wet sheet, take a hot bath, get on the sheet, wrap up, flop it in on you. It might be a little hard, you might have to leave one hand out or something, or pull some blankets down onto you or something, but if you've got a second person to cover you up, you can get in there. So what we do the cold sheet wrap, we put them there, we leave them there until they quit sweating, because they're sweating out, toxins are coming out. What's the biggest organ in your body? You can't say, okay. Yeah. So the biggest organ is the skin, and so you're eliminating a lot through the skin. And so as it's going out, but the minute you stop sweating, if those pores don't entirely close, they're going to start absorbing. And now you're going to take all that crud that you just got rid of and suck it right back in. And we don't want to go there. We want it out. Out is good, in is bad in this case. So as soon as they stop sweating, and what we do during this time is clean up in the bathroom, clean out the tub, wash the tub, get the water mopped up off the floor that's been spilled, and we'll stop by, we'll check on them, we'll bring them some more tea in the jar with a straw. Some people will be hot enough, we'll still put a cold cloth on their forehead. Yes, question?
You mentioned tea several times. What kind of tea are you talking about? Is it the regular tea?
This is not not peppermint tea. We're using, in other words, not necessarily a nice tasting drink.
This is yarrow?
This is yarrow,
sweating.
herbal teas.
Okay, herbal teas. Okay.
Herbal teas, and we usually try to specifically use the herbs that are going to help with whatever condition that they have.
For instance, when I had lymphoma, mullein and lobelia, like I told you earlier, cleanses the lymph system. So on the side of the tub every day, Mark would have 1 quart of yarrow tea, which helps sweat, and 1 quart of mullein and lobelia tea. And he wanted me to get those down before I got into the wet sheet pack.
Which she successfully did once we got past her being so toxic, throwing up. I would hand her the tea, she'd drink a little bit, she'd get that much out of it, and she'd be throwing up. And I'm thinking, wow, I wonder why. So I would take some tea, I'd take a whole mug of it, and I would drink an entire mug, and I go, oh, that was nasty. Okay, it's not that bad. What's your problem? Why are you throwing up? Well, lobelia, to start with, is a thinking herb. It will make you purge this way. It will purge you the other direction, depending on what you need and the case of the situation. Sometimes it doesn't. When there's nothing wrong, you can drink it, and it's like, oh, that was ooey, and you go on, and there's no problems. So that was it. But as we continued, I'd give her tea, she'd throw it up, we'd wipe her face off, I'd hand her some more tea. Here, have a little more.
Ever give up?
And it was just that continued. And before long, by the way, we did this 6 days a week for 3 months.
I learned to love Sabbath.
Because we didn't do the treatments on Sabbath. And the other, of course, we were doing the herbs. She was on juice. She had no solid food for 3 months. Nothing but juice. By the way, I'll get you in just a second. Cancer, absolutely no fruit of any kind, no sweet. Carrots are marginal as far as sweetness with a cancer patient.
You might have mentioned it, but a question is, how many of these baths do you do a day? 1?
1.
Okay, 5 hours after.
1. And we had a question back there in the back.
What type of juices do you use? I mean, if you're not doing fruits and stuff, what type of juices?
Okay, so she's asking, what type of juices do you use? With Melanie, This happened, she was diagnosed in late fall. Most of these treatments were through the winter time. And I was self-employed, no medical insurance, and if I'm not working, I'm not making any money. So there wasn't much budget to be able to go to the grocery store. The herbs that I bought went on a credit card. And we got what we could get. I juiced potatoes. I juiced cabbage. Cabbage is an awesome cancer cure. One of the neighbors
But
said...
you have to have your patient drink that cabbage juice
Yes.
within 15 or 20 minutes or the enzymes start going south, and then it's not helpful.
One of the neighbors said, that learned that she had cancer, said, I never got all my carrots dug in the garden last year. If you can get them out, you can have them. Well, this is in Idaho, and it was wintertime.
They're frozen in.
And they were frozen in. At that point, there was about 2 feet of snow on the ground. And I said, we'll see. So I got the pick and the shovel, and I took half of his garden with me. That's exaggeration, sorry. I took a lot of dirt with me. Out of his garden. Okay. I couldn't get the carrots out of the dirt, but I'd bust the dirt apart into chunks. I'd put it in a big stainless steel wash tub that we had, pack it in and set it by the wood stove, and as the dirt thawed out, I'd pull the carrots out. Let me tell you, those were the best carrots that I have ever eaten in my life. They were just wonderful. But we juiced anything in the vegetable line. Broccoli is good. Potatoes are awesome for red potatoes are awesome, especially red potatoes.
Garlic.
Was it organic, certified organic? No. In fact, in all honesty, and I knew this at the time I did it, the man who offered the carrots from his garden, by the way, he also had parsnips, rutabagas, and beets. I didn't know it at the time, but beets are wonderful for thyroid. And Melanie's issue was centered with thyroid. That's where it was diagnosed. But let me tell you something about cancer, and before we continue on with these treatments. And that is when somebody says, oh, you have thyroid cancer, or you have liver cancer, or you have pancreatic cancer. So the doctors go in and they take out the pancreas and they say, okay, or intestinal. And we took out a foot of cancer or a foot of bowel out of the colon, we got all the cancer. No, they did not get all the cancer. They may have gotten the tumor, the cancerous tumor, but it's through the entire body, it's through the blood. It's everywhere. And so that's why they say, well, we took it out, but now we need to do chemo and radiation because that's the only thing they know that will kind of kill it. The problem is the side effects of the cure are worse than the disease. Okay, I've been an hour, so I'll wrap it up. Thank you. Anyway, so after the person has stopped sweating, that could be anywhere between about 30 minutes to an hour and a half or 2. We're busy doing other things, coming and going, checking on them, making sure they're okay, put some music on and whatnot. So we've got the tub ready for them. We get them out of the wet sheet. We take them, stabilize them. They're usually quite weak, even if they walked to it or if we carried them to it. We stabilize, make sure they safely can get to the tub. We've put, usually before they get in the tub, we've put about 1 inch or 2 inches of body temperature water. So tepid water, or maybe slightly below. So maybe like 95-degree water in the bathtub. We don't want to open those pores back up entirely at this point. So just tepid water. And then what we do is we take table salt, and I have a bowl of salt, like a soup bowl full of table salt. And I dip my fingers into the salt, wet hands, okay? So my hands are very wet. I dip it in, so the salt is wet. She's wet because I splashed some water on her. And I begin going like this. You start at the limbs, and you vigorously rub. This is like...
Toward the heart.
This is like 40 grit sandpaper on the body. So you rub vigorously. You start here, you work. What's that? Morton's. We use just table salt. Make sure there's no sugar in it.
And don't use Himalayan pink salt. It'll tear their skin up because of
the shards that are in it. Himalayan pink salt is bad. We do from the feet to the legs. We do every inch of the body. When it gets to the part of privates, we usually say, okay,
your turn.
Now it's your turn. I want you to take the salt. Obviously, they're not going to be as vigorous as you have been, but we have them do the privates. And then we have a towel or something there. We'll have them pull it over themselves, or Melanie will be there with them if it's a lady. And then we will leave them with the salt on. We didn't initially do that. Most salt glows, people say, rub them on with the salt, rinse it off, and you're done. Well, there was an incident that happened. We had a lady that had been poisoned by mercury. And it was a lot of mercury. We thought she was a Wiccan witch. Her fingernails were black. Her lips were black. Around her eyes, I'm talking black. Her fingernails were so black, they looked like they were painted with black fingernail polish.
mercury.
It was mercury.
Oh,
Her boyfriend stole 10 pounds of mercury from the gun shop and put it in her food. He put it in her fridge. He put it in her dryer. He put it in her
Furnace.
Dresser drawer. He put it in her furnace. She was breathing it. She was eating it.
And she was wearing
it. After it was all said and done, they discovered what was happening. He burnt the house down. They found 8 of the 10 pounds in the house, but 2 pounds were missing.
and the doctor said she probably had most of that within her body.
She was going to Oregon State University Hospital.
She'd been a guinea pig for
She'd been a guinea pig for them, for over a year, and she was dying. She was losing ground. She spent more time horizontal, just in a vegetable state, than she was up.
She had a lot of it in her muscles, and it was coming out of the muscles into the organs slowly, and it was killing her slowly. And they were just watching the levels in her blood and her urine rise and rise and rise. And when she came to me and said, please help me, she was at an 8.2. They said when she got to a 10, she would be dead. And so we started giving her the fever treatment.
So one time while Melanie's doing the fever, not knowing if it would work, we said we don't know if it'll work, but we'll try. So one time normally she would be, as she did the fever treatments, this lady was very just like, because what happens, I'm going to back up. What happens with a thermometer that has mercury in it? Remember the old mercury thermometers? What does it do when mercury gets hot?
It expands.
It goes up, right?
It rises.
It rises, expands, it goes up. So when you're in a bathtub and you're full of mercury, what happens?
It rises.
It rises. Where does it go?
That poor girl would have screaming bad headaches.
Screaming headache. She would just cry and scream, and she'd say, please don't stop. Oh, and she'd be screaming. She wanted it, but at the same time, she was in horrible agony. She suffered a lot. Well, one time, she was more coherent after several months of this. And it was way more than 3 months, and there was other things involved, and that just makes it longer. But Melanie was talking with her.
Well, she asked me. For the first time, she communicated with me. I'm rubbing the salt on her, and she said, what are you putting on me? And I said, table salt. Why? So I start talking to her, and she said, well, how do you know it works? And so we had a conversation, and I was just amazed that she was that alert for that long. And so I'm talking to her for 10 or 15 minutes, and I look at her shoulder, and the salt is now silver colored. And I said, Sherry, your salt is turning silver. And she says, is that good or bad? And I said, I just haven't seen this before, but we usually rinse it off right away. And she said, should I rinse off? And I said, yes.
It's burning. She says it is burning a bit.
It's burning me. So I said, yes, you can stand up and rinse off.
So she stood up, rinsed off in the shower. And then she gets out and goes...
And I helped her to a bed.
Helped her to a bed to just rest, because she would be so weak she just wanted to lay down and rest afterwards. Melanie goes back in the bathroom to, now remember the drain's open, she just took a shower. She goes back in the bathroom to clean up, and there's something on the bottom of the shower.
Well, as I started cleaning it,
Yeah.
it all came together until I had a ball of mercury that big in the bottom of the tub, about the size of a $50, and I was shocked. It was just rolling around. You know, you pull mercury and it just comes together, comes together. That's what, every time we did that after that, we were pulling that much mercury out. But it didn't start happening.
Until
Here's one of the clues.
after we left the salt on.
And the other clue, or the other helper, I think, was I had learned that cilantro is a heavy metal puller. So I had put like 2 cups of cilantro in her green veggie drink with the carrots and the other things. And so that was helping pull this mercury out. But after that, leave the salt on, it would turn opaque. She would lose it into the bottom of the tub every day we did the treatment.
How long was the salt staying on there?
About 10 to 15 minutes before it would start burning. And when it starts burning, you know it's done all the drawing it's going to do, just get it off. And you have to rinse off with the cool water.
Tepid water to
Tepid water
rinse.
so it doesn't, you don't reabsorb anything, because then your pores are closing. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to zip through here and show you some statistics. Okay, fever treatment temperatures. So temperature in Fahrenheit. This would be water temperature. This is water temperatures and effects. So this is not necessarily for a fever treatment. This is just water. So if you're in 111 degree water, to get a 1st degree burn, you'd have to be in it for 270 minutes. So this has nothing to do with fever treatment. This is just, if you're sitting in 111, remember we said we run the water to 113, 114 degrees.
That would be without protection, though.
What?
The wool blanket gives you.
Yeah, the wool blanket helps add. But so at 113 degrees, to get a 1st degree burn, it takes 2 hours. We've never kept anybody in the tub more than 1 hour. So you're still a long ways off, and to get a 2nd degree burn, you're out here at 180 minutes. So what I'm showing you is by this, you're not going to burn their skin by the temperatures. And of course, if we bring this up, and yes, we use 140, 150 degree water going in, so no instant to 3 seconds, we don't want it on the skin. That's why the socks and the blanket, and why we pull them away and we try to scoop and protect. Okay?
See, even at 116, you got to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, 116 makes a big difference. We have had it up that high a couple of times, but usually not for very long. Okay, you get the same benefits from 104 degrees for 10 minutes as 100 degrees for 60 minutes. So what does that mean? Here's what it amounts to, is the cooler the water,
No, the
or
body
hotter,
temperature.
excuse me, the hotter
Body
the
temp-
water, the shorter the time.
Isn't that body temperatures, Mark? You're working body temperatures
Yes,
here,
body
honey.
temperature, sorry, but so the cooler, I should say, so the hotter the body temperature, the shorter the distance of length of time. So in other words, same
To get
effect.
the same effect is what he's
So
saying.
104 degree body temperature for 10 minutes would take an hour at 100 degree body temperature too. So just 4 degrees hotter, you go from 60 minutes to 10 minutes. So you can get an idea of the amount of, by getting the temperature to 104, instead of suffering for so long, for an hour in there, you can shorten that time. But
And if you keep them in there for 50 minutes at the higher temperature, or even at 105, 106, you're getting a
getting
powerhouse
a
of
lot.
healing inside the body. And that's our goal.
Okay, these are suggested, we've accumulated this from different books. These are suggested temperatures, body temperatures, for what to do to beat it. Although, in all honesty, we have found if you hit 103 for most things besides like serious diseases, cancer, AIDS, etc. like that, but colds, flus, so 100 to 103, sore throat, same thing, 100 to 103. Lupus, they're saying that I would say a disease like this, You need to get the temperature up there higher. Okay, this might work, like lupus for 100 to 103, it might work. The problem is, how many times do you want to do a treatment before it works? If we can beat this thing in, say, 6 weeks, because we got our temperature up to 105 or 6, let's do it instead of suffering for, for 7 months doing it, whatever. So as you get to the different diseases, this is what it's showing. Syphilis, 106 to 107 body temperature to beat that thing. Arthritis, 101 to 103. Cancer, they're saying 103 to 106. From our experience, 103 is the bottom number, and you're might
just playing
gain,
with
but
it.
you're gaining in slow motion.
Yeah.
Multiple sclerosis, 100 to 104. Basically, where we've drawn the line personally with us is we'll say 102, 103 for the common cold, and the flu, anything like that. Anything that's worse than that, push it up there to 104, 105. And if need be, run it on up there to get it up there to 106.
What's the number 13
Impetigo.
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 It's, I was trying to remember what it is.
It's a viral infection.
Viral, I think it's related to a skin.
It's a
Yeah,
skin
that's what I was
disease.
thinking, it was a skin disease.
It's really, really bad.
Yeah.
You get big sore.
We have found, for finishing this all up, that's just what I've got for slides, and so we're going to call it quits here, but what we've found is if somebody is sick and you don't know what to do, fever treatment. It's like just the flat-out cure-all.
With the cold wet sheet pack and the salt glow.
Yeah, and most
That
people have not
together is
connected.
powerhouse.
You may find a few out there that are doing it, but the fever treatment connected with the cold wet sheet wrap, connected with the salt glow at the end,
And the herbal teas.
along with the teas and stuff, that combination is so powerful. All of those therapies can be used separately, but when you put them together, you just have, well, guys, I would say to be the difference between using a frame and hammer and a 16-pound sledgehammer driving a great big stake in the ground. It's just a massive difference by putting all of those things together. Hopefully that helps. Question?
It's easy to, when you're getting into this, to forget to pray before you actually get started.
We always pray, and I forgot to mention that. We always pray with our patients. We put them in the tub, we get them wrapped up, the tub water's, hot, nice hot bath water temp, and we pray. And then we start turning up the heat. Yes, thank you. That is the most important, and I left it out. What's that?
The best secret ingredient.
Secret ingredient.
Secret ingredient. Yes, it definitely is. Well, hopefully that
By
makes
the
sense.
way, excuse
Go ahead.
me. Dr. Christopher says that radiation is going to be a problem before the Lord comes. And he said, if you have radiation poisoning, take one of these baths, but put a pound of Epsom salts in your water. And he said, try and make your bath an hour long, and then do the cold finish.
So you're not trying to push the temperature up to 105 or 6. You're just doing a hot
You're just
bath.
soaking the radiation out.
With the
He
Epsom
says do
salts.
that 6 days a week for several weeks, and you'll get rid of radiation poisoning. Excuse me?
We'll need a whole bunch of pounds of Epsom salt.
Yes, ma'am. We buy it in a 25-pound bag at our house.
What about
For these.
chemo? Can you do that with chemo, or radiation is just more?
The chemo is some kind of drugs. The radiation treatments are radiation, and yeah, that would have to be in the water.
Okay, but not chemo.
But chemo is some sort of drug that really messes with the organs. It causes your major organs to go to mush, is what it does.
So, I would say for the first time you ever do this to somebody, don't try to push them up very, very high. You might freak out in the process. But, you know, be content. If you can get a first treatment up to 101 to 102 and hold them there for 20 to 30 minutes, call it a success. By the way, don't be afraid to abort the treatment. We have done it many, many times. If the pulse gets too rapid, where your pulse is getting up above 160, 170 beats a minute, by the way, that for somebody doing hard, vigorous exercise, it will get up to that point. So it's not like, oh, that's so bad, it should be nowhere. No, but if you start getting soaring way up there, or if it becomes irregular, if they pass out on you, and things just don't look good, and it makes you a little nervous.
Pull the plug and
pour the water on them, and trust me, they'll come
home.
They'll come right back up.
Jody,
awake.
I said 190. You may not want to let them go that high because you've not done hundreds and hundreds of these like we have. 160 might be more comfortable for you. Because once it goes to 190 and they get a rapid heart rate at the same time, that's a little on the scary side, even for me, and I'm
well
it's
seasoned.
like falling off a log for me.
I think actually Melanie's done more fever treatments now than I have.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all the different individuals. She was the one that did most of those treatments. We've treated more women than men.
I've done them on babies, less than a year old. I've done them on 96, 98-year-olds as well.
So, how to do a little child, like your children here? Guess what? When we had our little ones, either mommy or daddy got in the bathtub, and you got the treatment too. Except the difference is, mommy and daddy, or daddy in the bathtub, would keep their hands out, and maybe even a foot sticking out.
On.
The claws and the blanket are covering you and the little one.
Cold claws on their
Then the
head.
cold claws are on the little one.
And you might need one on your own just so you can have the presence
help
of mind to
maintain.
keep up.
Melanie has actually done fever treatments to our children while she was the one in the tub with them.
To keep them calm, especially with our middle
Nobody else
child
there.
that was damaged by childhood disease shots, and I wanted him to get over his autism and all the other things. And so I would get in the tub with him every day, and our older daughter, who's 2 years older than she would keep the water moving while I kept the claws on his head, because with Michael, he was motor sensory disorder, so he couldn't feel it. But when he got hot and uncomfortable, then he'd just come apart. And so I just have to hold him and calm him down. And that's what we did with all the other little children that came. We'd have a parent get in with them and hold them to comfort them as they took the bath. And tried to keep them between 104, 104.5. Don't let them go up 105, 106. That's too much for a little one. So,
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Any questions before we close?
Is there any way we could get this information? Because I didn't write everything down.
Yes, there is we have, if you go to our website, which is testimonypress.org, testimonypress.org, and you will find a link for the health page. On the health page, you will find, I believe it's on the health page, I think I put it there. There's also a video page, but I'm sure it's on the health page. You will find embedded
Hydrotherapy?
YouTube videos. There is this one.
It's the health page.
It's the health page. So you will find videos on the fever treatments, fomentations. I'm always the guinea pig. I was the one got the fomentations as well. There's like there's another treatment that you can watch. You can go there and watch there, and that's called a lemon baking soda wrap. We don't use baking soda internally, but we do use it externally, and the whole video's there. It is a power pack, pulling, cleansing through the skin, and it's not nearly as torturous as the fever treatment. The fever treatment's a hard one to endure.
You do have to stay in it 2 hours, though.
Yeah, you'd got to be there 2 hours. The hardest part is laying still, all wrapped up for 2 hours.
But it's interesting how it works. It literally resets the immune system. It's been under wraps for a long time, but And we had a lady that was kind enough to show each one of us the portions for all the ingredients. And so that she didn't give any one of us the recipe, and then we went home.
Because she had promised that she wouldn't give out the recipe. But she let Matt watch part of it, she let Melanie watch part of it, and I got to watch part of it. I think it was, good chance it was intentional. But anyway, so we were able to learn, and we've made a video and sharing that. So that's on there as well. And it's 8:30. We need to be temperate and get some rest. Seems like we heard something about that today, huh? Yeah, it's 8:35. Yes.
Just an announcement.
Oh, and I got an announcement too for the morning. Tell you what, let's have a prayer
Okay.
and a close, and then we'll do some announcements.
He's got a mic.
You want to pray?
Okay. Our Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for your mercy upon us and giving us these natural remedies. Water is a miracle solvent that you've given us to use in healing, promotion of life, and sustenance of life. And we just praise you for the water and all the things that you give us. We thank you for the Sabbath. And that as we start a new week, I pray that you start preparing us for next Sabbath. That you be with us, and that all that we say and do will be to your name's honor and glory. And I also want to lift up to you all the different ministries that are represented here. We know that time is getting shorter. We just pray that you'll place us all where we can be used the most effectively for you for this work. In Jesus' name we pray and ask all these things. Amen.
Amen.